The terminal buzzed with that familiar, restless energy only airports carry, suitcase wheels echoing on polished floors, faint announcements bouncing off glass walls, and 1,000 different stories unfolding all at once. Jason sat beside his 20-year-old son, John, near gate 47, doing his best to keep things calm before their long flight. John looked pale, his legs stretched awkwardly in front of him, a reminder of the accident and the long months of recovery that followed. Jason had upgraded their seats, giving them extra legroom near the front. His son's comfort mattered more than anything. John scrolled idly on his tablet, earbuds dangling unused. His gaze flicked uneasily around the crowded waiting area. "Dad," he murmured, "people keep staring." Jason smiled the way only a weary father could. "They're not staring, kid. Everyone's just trying to survive airport limbo." An announcement crackled overhead, half words, half static. Jason barely noticed. His attention stayed on John, on how fragile he still seemed even while pretending to be strong. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Jason saw movement. A woman was striding toward them, middle-aged, heavy-set, dressed in expensive clothes that screamed confidence. Her blonde hair was carefully styled, her powder blue knit top neat and pressed. She stopped right in front of Jason, hand on her hip. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "Is that an upgraded boarding pass you're holding?" Jason blinked. Yes, it is." The woman smiled, but not kindly. It was the kind of smile people give before taking something. "Perfect. I thought so. You see, I've been trying to get an upgrade for my husband and me, but they told me there weren't any available. And yet here you are sitting with two." Jason stayed calm. "That's right," he said evenly. "I bought them yesterday." Her expression tightened. "Well, maybe you can switch. My husband has long legs and a bad back. I'm sure your son can handle a regular seat." John froze, gripping his tablet. Jason met the woman's gaze, feeling a sharp edge settle in his chest. "I'm sorry," he said calmly, "but my son's recovering from knee surgery." The upgrade was for his leg room. The woman's eyebrows rose. "Knee surgery, really?" Her eyes swept over John as if searching for proof. "He looks fine to me." Jason exhaled slowly. The hum of the terminal seemed to fade, replaced by the steady drum of his heartbeat. "Ma'am, he's not fine. And this seat isn't up for debate. That should have ended it." But it didn't. The woman, Lillian, as Jason would later learn, leaned closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "You know, it's selfish to hold on to something you don't really need. My husband has a medical condition too." "Then maybe you should have planned ahead," Jason replied, his tone still measured but edged with warning. A few nearby passengers glanced over. Lillian straightened, raising her voice for the audience she now had. "Oh, I see how it is. You think you're special because you can afford upgrades." John's face flushed. "Dad, maybe we should just—" Jason shook his head. "No, you sit tight." Lillian's lips thinned. She turned and waved down a nearby gate attendant, her voice suddenly sweet. "Excuse me. There seems to be a mistake here." The attendant, a young woman with her hair pulled back in a tight bun, walked over with a tablet in hand. "What seems to be the issue?" "This man," Lillian said, pointing accusingly, "has taken my upgraded seat." Jason stayed seated, his voice calm and steady. "That's not true." The attendant tapped on her screen, checking their tickets. A few seconds later, she looked up. "Ma'am, your seat is 26E. That's in economy." "There must be a system error," Lillian said quickly. "I specifically asked for extra legroom." "I'm sorry," the attendant replied politely. "But that upgrade wasn't processed." "His was." Lillian's eyes darted between Jason and the screen, desperate for a foothold. "Well, maybe he tricked the system. You should double-check." Jason's patience thinned. He took a slow breath. "Ma'am, I don't think I need to justify my purchase to you." Lillian's voice dropped low, thick with resentment. "People like you ruin things for others. You think money gives you the right to everything?" Jason's jaw tightened. "No, but decency should count for something." The gate attendant stepped between them. "Ma'am, please take your seat. Boarding will begin soon." Lillian glared one last time before turning sharply away, muttering about entitled families. The attendant offered Jason a small, apologetic smile. "Some people just don't like hearing no," Jason nodded. "Thanks." When she left, he leaned back, trying to release the tension in his chest. John stared at his lap, voice small. "I hate that kind of stuff," Jason softened. "Hey, you did nothing wrong." She made it sound like we were stealing, John said quietly. She can say whatever she wants, Jason replied. We know the truth. Outside the window, an airplane crawled slowly across the tarmac, sunlight glinting off its metal skin. The moment might have ended there, awkward but over, but Lillian wasn't done. 20 minutes later, just as boarding began, she reappeared, this time with a quieter, more dangerous confidence. She was speaking animatedly with another gate attendant, pointing toward Jason and John. The staff member frowned, clearly unsure. Jason felt the weight of shifting glances from other passengers. He stood, the instinct for confrontation humming beneath his calm. Stay here, he told John quietly. Jason walked up to the counter, his hands relaxed but steady. Is there a problem? He asked calmly. The gate agent glanced between them, cautious. Sir, this lady claims there's been some confusion with your upgrade. Jason met Lillian's gaze. We've already cleared this up. She's insisting, the attendant added carefully. Lillian crossed her arms, her voice sharp. You can't just let people like him take what others deserve. Jason's restraint faltered for a moment, his eyes narrowing. People like me? The words hung in the air like a challenge. For the first time, Lillian seemed to realize she might have pushed too far, then doubled down. Yes, people who think rules don't apply to them. Jason glanced toward the waiting area. A few passengers had their phones half raised, pretending not to record. He smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. You might want to stop talking now, he said quietly. The gate agent sensed the growing tension and stepped in. Ma'am, the seat is his. Please take your assigned seat or you may be denied boarding. Lillian's mouth opened, then closed again. She huffed, turned sharply, and stormed off toward the boarding line. The confrontation ended, but the echo of it lingered. Jason returned to John, who looked both relieved and uneasy. She's not going to stop, is she? He asked. Jason placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Probably not, he said softly. But she'll trip over herself eventually. People like that always do. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. Jason exhaled, straightened his jacket, and looked at his son. Let's get on that plane, kid. We've got front row seats to Karma. As they stood, Jason could feel eyes following them. Not judgmental now, but curious, maybe even supportive. Lillian was already at the gate, tapping her foot impatiently, still muttering under her breath. As Jason and John approached, their eyes met for a brief, charged moment. Hers were sharp and vindictive, his steady and unreadable. Neither said a word. The boarding scanner beeped softly as Jason handed over their passes. Enjoy your flight, Mr. and Mr. Walker, the attendant said with a polite smile. Jason nodded, guiding John down the jet bridge. Behind them, Lillian's voice carried faintly through the noise, sharp, insistent, already beginning to fray. He didn't look back. But deep down, he knew the real storm wasn't over yet. Inside the cabin, the lights glowed a soft gold as passengers settled into their seats. The low murmur of conversation mixed with the steady hum of the air vents. Jason guided John to row 12, the upgraded seats he'd fought to keep. They were spacious, positioned near the front with a clear view of the flight attendants preparing for takeoff. John eased down carefully, stretching his legs with visible relief. For the first time all morning, he smiled. Feels good, doesn't it? Jason said, stowing their bags overhead. Yeah, John replied, adjusting his seatbelt. It actually doesn't hurt. Jason nodded and settled into his own seat. He had barely buckled in when a familiar voice cut through the calm. Excuse me? Excuse me, there's been a mistake. Lillian. She stood in the aisle, blocking the line of passengers behind her, her carry-on jutting forward like a shield. Her voice was loud enough for half the cabin to hear. Nearby, passengers looked up, some annoyed, others curious. Jason closed his eyes briefly before turning. Ma'am, please. She raised her hand sharply, silencing him. You again. I told you, that's my seat. A flight attendant, a composed woman in her 40s, approached with the calm authority of someone used to 1,000 small crises. Ma'am, may I see your boarding pass? Lillian thrust it toward her like an accusation. The attendant scanned it, her tone even. You're in 22B, ma'am. That's toward the back. That can't be right, Lillian protested. I was promised extra legroom. Jason stayed still, feeling frustration simmer beneath his calm. The other passengers were watching closely now. John shifted uncomfortably beside him. Dad, he whispered. Maybe we should just let her. Jason shook his head. No, you don't reward bad behavior. Lillian's voice rose, drawing even more attention. This is ridiculous. That seat should be mine. I have a medical condition. The flight attendant's patience thinned. Ma'am, if you'd like to discuss this further, we can step off the plane and speak to the gate supervisor. Lillian froze, unwilling to risk losing her flight. Her lips trembled with anger. Fine, she snapped. But I'll be reporting this. She glared at Jason one last time before stomping down the aisle toward row 22. Jason exhaled slowly, the tension leaving his body. Crisis averted, he murmured. John gave a small, uneasy laugh. You think that's the last we'll see of her? Jason glanced toward the back of the cabin, where Lillian was loudly trying to jam her oversized bag into an already full overhead bin. I doubt it, he said. As the plane pushed back from the gate, John turned to the window. The rising sun painted the clouds in soft orange light, casting a calm glow across the cabin. For a few quiet minutes there was peace, only the rumble of the engines and the steady vibration underfoot. Then, halfway through takeoff, Jason noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. A whisper ran down the rows, a ripple of uneasy glances. He turned and saw Lillian again, leaning forward, speaking animatedly to a flight attendant near her row. Even over the engines, her voice carried unfair treatment, disrespect, verbal abuse. Jason felt his son's eyes on him. Is she talking about us? John asked quietly. Jason's jaw tightened. Looks like it. The attendant near Lillian nodded politely, then made her way forward, stopping beside Jason's row. Her tone was cautious but professional. Sir, would you mind confirming there wasn't an altercation earlier at the gate? Jason blinked. You mean the argument she started? She mentioned she felt threatened, the attendant said carefully. John's voice cracked. What? She's lying. Jason lifted a calming hand. It's fine, he said gently, then turned to the attendant. You have cameras at the gate. You'll see exactly what happened. She was the one causing trouble. The attendant nodded, lowering her voice. I figured as much, sir. Don't worry. We've had complaints about her before. Just sit tight. If she keeps it up, the captain will be informed. As she walked away, John let out a shaky breath. She's trying to get us in trouble. Jason's tone was calm but hard as steel. Some people only feel powerful when they make others small. Don't give her what she wants. The flight continued, but the air around them felt charged. Every so often, Jason caught Lillian's reflection in the glossy window, her eyes darting toward them, calculating. She was waiting, planning her next move. Dinner service began. The smell of reheated pasta drifted through the cabin. John ate quietly, glancing at the aisle every few seconds. Jason pretended not to notice, though he felt the same unease. Lillian hadn't spoken again, but her silence was its own kind of warning. An hour later, just as the lights dimmed for the overnight portion, Lillian struck again. She pressed her call button and motioned to the same attendant. Excuse me, she said sweetly, her tone dripping with false politeness. I'm really not comfortable with that man up there. He's been recording me. Jason's stomach sank. He realized she must have noticed his earlier video at the gate. The attendant approached, looking apologetic. Sir, have you been filming? Jason pulled his phone from the seat pocket and handed it over unlocked. Check for yourself. There's only one clip, proof she was yelling at my son before boarding. The attendant watched it briefly, then nodded firmly. Thank you, sir. You've done nothing wrong. She returned the phone, her professional mask cracking just enough to show sympathy. From the back, Lillian's voice rang out again. You're all on his side because he paid extra, aren't you? Typical. The attendant gave a thin, controlled smile. Ma'am, if you can't remain respectful, I'll have to document your behavior. Lillian folded her arms and sank into her seat, muttering under her breath. The cabin grew quiet again, but not relaxed. The passengers around her exchanged looks, the silent understanding of people watching entitlement unravel. John leaned closer. She's not stopping, Dad. She's really going to try to ruin this flight. Jason's voice was calm, almost detached. Then we let her. She's digging her own hole. Time crawled. The steady hum of the engines became hypnotic, but Jason couldn't rest. Every time someone glanced his way, he felt the weight of the situation pressing on him. It wasn't anger anymore, it was calculation. Every outburst, every word from her was more evidence. When the captain's voice finally came over the intercom to announce their descent, Jason exhaled. For the first time in hours, he allowed himself to relax. They were almost free of her. But as the wheels touched down and the passengers broke into polite applause, Lillian stood abruptly, ignoring the seatbelt sign. "I need to speak to the flight crew immediately," she announced. The lead attendant hurried over, frowning. "Ma'am, please sit down." "This man has been harassing me," Lillian declared, pointing dramatically at Jason. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the cabin. Jason didn't move. The attendant looked tired but composed. "Ma'am, several passengers have already confirmed otherwise. Please take your seat." Lillian blinked, thrown off balance. "They're lying!" Jason finally spoke, his tone calm but cutting. "Maybe you should stop talking before you make things worse." Her face flushed crimson. For a moment she looked ready to explode, but instead, she snapped her mouth shut and dropped into her seat. The attendants resumed their duties. Though the tension still hung thick in the air, John stared straight ahead, whispering, "She's going to come after us again." "Isn't she?" Jason adjusted his watch, a faint knowing smile crossing his face. "If she does," he said quietly, "I'll be ready this time." The plane door hissed open with a rush of recycled air and relief. Jason let the other passengers file out while John limped slowly beside him, gripping the rail for balance. The hum of conversation grew around them, people eager to escape the cramped cabin. Jason only wanted to get his son safely through the terminal and home, but fate, or maybe karma, had other plans. Lillian was waiting at the gate desk, arms folded, eyes blazing with a sense of victory. Her voice sliced through the background noise like a blade. "There he is," she declared to the two uniformed staff members at the counter. "That's the man who harassed me and my family during the flight. You need to do something about him." John froze. "You've got to be kidding," he whispered. Jason felt his pulse steady instead of rise. Years in management had taught him that the calmest voice always carried the most weight. He stepped forward, tone measured and composed. "Is there a problem?" Lillian spun toward him, her outrage exaggerated and trembling. "You filmed me without permission. You humiliated me in front of everyone and put my safety at risk." The younger gate agent blinked, clearly torn between confusion and disbelief. "Ma'am, please lower your voice." Jason calmly reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone and unlocked it with a few taps. "You might want to see this before deciding who's telling the truth." He played the video, the same one from before boarding. Lillian's voice filled the terminal, sharp and unmistakable, shouting accusations, pointing fingers, calling him a liar. The sound echoed through the air, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. Lillian froze. "Turn that off," she snapped, lunging forward, but the gate agent blocked her path. "Ma'am," came a firm voice from behind the counter. A supervisor had stepped out of a side office. "Please step back." He took Jason's phone, watching the clip silently. His expression shifted from neutral to quietly disapproving. When it ended, he looked up at Lillian. "Would you like to explain this?" Lillian's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "That's taken out of context. He provoked me first." Jason said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence spoke louder than any words. Around them, murmurs spread. Passengers stopped to watch. A few who had been on the flight whispered confirmations. "She was yelling the whole time." Yeah, the dad stayed calm. That woman was way out of line. The supervisor turned to the nearest attendant. "Get security, please." Lillian's face went pale. "Security, what for?" "I'm the victim here." "Ma'am," the supervisor replied evenly. "We have clear video evidence showing you verbally harassed another passenger and disrupted boarding. That violates airline policy." Jason caught John's eye and subtly signaled for him to stay back. He didn't want his son pulled into the chaos any further. Lillian changed tactics. Her tone softened, almost tearful. "Look, I was just stressed. It's been a terrible week. My husband's in pain and I was only trying to help him. Maybe I overreacted, but I didn't mean—" Jason cut in gently, but his words hit like steel. "You told my son he was lying about his injury. You called me a thief and tried to take something you didn't earn. Stress doesn't excuse cruelty." The words hung in the air, sharp, undeniable. Lillian's eyes darted around, searching for support, but none came. The terminal was still now, save for the hum of the air conditioning and a faint boarding announcement overhead. The supervisor handed Jason's phone back with a respectful nod. "Thank you, sir. We'll handle it from here." Two security officers arrived, their posture calm but firm. "Ma'am, we just need to speak with you about what happened," one said. Lillian straightened, trying to regain her composure. "You people are ridiculous. I'm a paying customer." The officer didn't flinch. "And we take passenger safety seriously. Please come with us," her shoulders sagged. The fight drained from her face. She followed them a few steps before turning back toward Jason. Her voice cracked with bitterness. "You think you've won, don't you? People like you always need to be the hero." Jason met her stare, calm and unwavering. "No," he said softly. "I just wanted to fly in peace." The officers led her away. She didn't resist, though her cheeks flushed a deep, blotchy red. A few passengers clapped, not mockingly but out of quiet relief. One man near the counter muttered, "About time someone stood up to people like that." John walked up beside his father, still processing what had happened. "Dad," he said softly, "they're actually taking her away." Jason placed a steady hand on his son's shoulder. "She did that to herself." They headed toward baggage claim. The crowd thinned, replaced by the rhythmic sound of suitcase wheels on tile. For the first time that day, Jason finally exhaled, slow and steady, a breath that carried the weight of everything they'd just endured. The anger had left him, replaced by something steadier, money closure. John broke the silence. "How did you stay so calm through all of that?" Jason smiled faintly. "I wasn't calm," he said. "I was just more patient than she was." John chuckled, though the exhaustion still showed in his face. "You think she'll be banned?" "Probably flagged, at least," Jason replied. "Airlines don't forget incidents like that." They reached the carousel just as their luggage slid into view. The steady rhythm of the machinery filled the air, a mechanical lullaby after the chaos of the day. John grabbed his duffel bag, wincing slightly as he lifted it. Jason took the heavier suitcase without a word. As they turned toward the exit, a woman who'd been sitting near them on the flight approached hesitantly. "Excuse me," she said, offering a small tentative smile. "I just wanted to say you handled that beautifully." "Most people would have lost it." Jason gave a modest nod. "Appreciate that," he said. "Some things aren't worth shouting over." She laughed softly. Still, it was nice to see a little justice for once. When she walked away, John looked up at his father. "Guess we went viral before we even landed." Jason frowned. "What?" John nodded toward a group of teenagers nearby, their phones out, watching something on TikTok. A familiar voice, Lillian's, echoed faintly from one of the screens, mid-rant, captured for the world to see. Jason shook his head, half amused, half resigned. "Well," he said, "maybe that's the new version of karma." They stepped outside into the cool evening air. The city lights shimmered in the distance, reflected in the glass walls of the terminal. John limped a little, but with more confidence than before. Jason fell into step beside him, the quiet between them now easy and unburdened. "You know," John said after a moment, "if you ever write a book, that story's going on the first page." Jason chuckled. "Only if it ends with her learning something." John grinned. "Do you think she will?" Jason paused at the curb, glancing back through the glass doors. Across the lobby, Lillian sat on a bench beside a security officer, her head bowed, phone clutched uselessly in her hands. "I think life has a way of teaching lessons," he said quietly. "Whether we're ready or not." A taxi pulled up. Jason opened the door for his son, helping him inside before sliding in beside him. As they drove away, the terminal lights faded into the blur of the night, and with them, the last trace of chaos disappeared into memory.